state. Joe Biden, by the way, has the fewest federal leases going back to Harry Truman in 1947. So what I'm saying here is they haven't done a darn thing to ameliorate the problem of high-priced electricity and natural gas services. And even with gasoline fallen in recent weeks, it's still very, very high compared to 2 years ago.
They're artificially increasing the supply by reducing the dangerously low levels of our strategic petroleum reserves, the lowest level in 38 years, and right after the election, they're going to stop doing that, I can guarantee it. Why is it okay? What is the logic behind we can import oil from other countries, but we can't produce it domestically? What is the difference in terms of the impact on Mother Earth? Because I would imagine in America, we're going to do it faster, cheaper, and cleaner. Do we not?
Yeah, listen, first of all, natural gas is a clean burning fuel. And second of all, our oil production is the cleanest in the world. Cleaner than Russia, cleaner than the Saudis, cleaner than Venezuela or Iran. But, Sean, I think you know as well as I, what's behind this very bad thinking is you have this very radical, obsessive, climate change group that's in charge of the White House and the Congress. So they're not interested in cheap electricity or cheap gasoline. They want high prices. They're not interested in solving these problems for national security. They're only interested in election year price fixing. But that's cheap petroleum. They don't care.
If you have an electric vehicle, don't you use the electric grid to power up the battery in that electric vehicle? And isn't 90% of the electric grid in the country, you're not having a brownout in Gavin Newsom's California, isn't that fossil fuel related?
Yes, of course, absolutely. It's especially related to natural gas. I mean, so in California, Gavin Newsom is saying you got to buy an electric car in 10 years, but he's also saying if you own one now, you can't recharge the battery. Why? Because there's a shortage of electricity. Why? Because there's a shortage of natural gas. No, you can't make this stuff up. But again, the logic here is the Green New Deal climate change obsession that they have. There's no scientific evidence behind this. And I want to say, with respect to our show tomorrow, our Fox Nation show on socialism, their regulatory assault on fossils is a perfect example, Sean, of socialism. It's central planning. It makes the government run the economy. Nowadays, you don't have to buy the steel mills the way you did under Joseph Stalin. You do it all through the regulatory dictates of the executive branch. That's exactly what they've done. They want to bring down free market capitalism. They want to bring down free enterprise. They have these bizarre views about energy, and that's what we're seeing play out until the cavalry comes in November.
And the sad part is the American people are suffering needlessly. More Americans racking up credit card debt with high interest rates. 2/3 of the country now living paycheck to paycheck. Democrats, they say they have a monopoly of compassion. Not very compassionate to the American people. Larry, good to see you. We'll be watching that special on socialism tomorrow. Thank you, sir. All right, when we come back, a Hannity investigation. Congressman James Comer has an explosive report on the Biden family syndicate and their corruption. You don't want to miss this. Also, Lee Zeldin calling out the New York governor, Kathy Hochul, for her horrific record with crime. Is it possible the bluest of blue states, New York, could turn red? Straight ahead.
See, all the states gonna turn red. I just put that on. Put that on. All the states gonna turn red.
We've learned about today's Democrats and their media servants is that the louder they scream about something, is they're guilty of that exact same thing. They scream about diversity and compassion, but when 50 Latino migrants arrive on Martha's Vineyard, they call up the National Guard and deport them to a military base. They scream about fairness. That pushed school closures and lockdowns that hurt working Americans and helped the rich. And of course, climate and the private jets, yeah, that one's too easy. John Kerry, whatever. So, bearing all that in mind, what are we to make of the main focus of their screaming these days? Watch.
They're a threat to our very democracy.
Threat to our very democracy. Extreme threat to our democracy. Attacking our democracy. Undermine democracy.
Our democracy.
Our democracy. Our democracy.
Our democracy, Republicans are a threat to our democracy. Oh, really? Is it Republicans who pushed early voting, which basically nullifies election campaigns and protects incumbents, sending out ballots?
Question everything. We've been stupid for too long. Common sense is the change. Go back to using it.
Debates between the candidates. Sorry, can't change your vote. Too late. If you're a political outsider or new to politics, trying to get your name out there when voters actually start paying attention. Sorry, too late. Early voting. Insiders and establishment only. Did Republicans do that? No. And now we know why Democrats are so obsessed with early voting. Bill Clinton let it slip just today.
And we have to know the Republicans always close well.
That's why Democrats want early voting. It's not about saving our democracy, it's about saving their political skins. And that's why they wrote what is probably the most anti-democracy legislation ever put before the US Congress. Nancy Pelosi's notorious H.R. 1, the bill that Kamala Harris just told us they would abolish the filibuster to pass. And no wonder, among other horrors, it would impose early voting everywhere, automatically register voters from any government database. What could possibly go wrong with that? Register 16-year-olds, even though it's illegal for them to vote. Impose mail-in voting nationwide, even though the Jimmy Carter James Baker Commission said it was the most vulnerable form of voting to fraud. And it would extend vote counting beyond election day, even though that's exactly what allows conspiracy theories to thrive. This massively overreaching federal law would undermine most states' voter ID laws, and just because all of that is not quite egregious enough an assault on our democracy, the Democrats on top of all that want to mandate nationwide the banana republic atrocity of ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting! The people who never stop lecturing you about protecting our democracy are the exact same people who think it's okay for paid political operatives to go from door to door helping voters to fill out the mail in ballots they now automatically get. And not only do they think it's okay, they want to make it available in every state. I mean, why don't they just cut out the middleman and pass a law making the Democrat candidate the automatic winner of every election? They clearly have total contempt for the democratic process. One candidate after another, refusing to even debate. Here in California, in the state controller race, pathetic Malia Cohen won't debate the Republican candidate Lani Chen. Join us later. Same thing with state attorney general. Crime totally out of control, but the useless machine politician in charge, who wasn't even elected in the first place, Rob Bonta, won't debate his challenger Nathan Hochman. These Democrats hate democracy unless it delivers the only acceptable outcome in their view. Power for Democrats. They have the mindset of a totalitarian one-party state. You think that's hyperbole? Listen to DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas last Sunday on the 9/11 anniversary.
Now we are seeing an emerging threat, of course, over the last several years of the domestic violent extremist anti-government sentiment, false narratives propagated on online platforms.
Did you hear that? Anti-government sentiment now makes you a domestic violent extremist, the equivalent of a 9/11 terrorist. America was built on anti-government sentiment, and now Democrats want to criminalize it. Does anyone realize how chilling this all is? When Democrats say democracy, they mean power for them. That's why Biden thinks nothing of illegally giving a $500 billion bribe to rich college kids. It's why they collude with big tech to censor political opposition and crush dissident voices. It's why they gerrymander congressional districts while complaining about gerrymandering. It's why they're trying to rig the voting rules permanently in their favor while accusing Republicans of undermining democracy. It's why they're politicizing the FBI, the Justice Department, law enforcement, to go after their political opponents, parents, anyone who stands in their way. How dare they talk about undermining democracy when that is what they themselves do every single day? Tell us what you think at Next for FNC and at Steve Hilton X, and share this message when we post it. Here with me to discuss is the candidate for the US Senate in Washington State, Tiffany Smiley. Great to see you, Tiffany. I mean, it seems to me it's just all totally partisan. This endless talk about our democracy is just to deflect from them having to talk about the issues, the real issues facing people where they're failing and, according to the latest polls, far behind.
That's right. It's become clear that here in my state that Patty Murray wants to have 0 debates before voting begins in Washington. It's undemocratic, it's a slap in the face to the electoral process, and an insult to voters. You know, for someone, Patty Murray, my opponent, has spent millions to paint me as a threat to democracy. Our family has served, sacrificed greatly for this country. My husband lost his eyesight for this country. He's never seen our 3 beautiful, amazing kids, and because of that service. And we took on the VA for reform for every Democrat, every Republican, every independent. I am fighting for all of Washington State. And when you look at my opponent's messaging, she says she's fighting for progressive Democrat views. I'm fighting for all of Washington. I'm fighting for the voice of everyone. And if our country cannot get back to that, then I don't know what our future holds. I know for certain why our family is fighting, and that's to be a voice for everyone in Washington State. You know, recently I was at a Safeway in Kent, Washington, where I saw 2 little girls outside of their car playing. It looked like, oh, are you misplaced? But it was like it was their backyard, and their mom was in the grocery store trying to make ends meet. I will hold Patty Murray accountable for raising taxes in the middle of a recession. And do you know that these 87,000 IRS agents that they are bringing to all of us, that those making $25,000 are 5 times more likely to be audited by the IRS. That's what our family is standing up for the American dream, for those little girls sitting in a parking lot that they can have a hand up in this country. That's what the American dream is built on.
I love it. You put that so well. And I just want to, what I really noticed there, and I want you to talk about a little bit more, is just the emotion when you have these attacks on you. I didn't realize she's saying it about you. It's kind of undermining democracy stuff. It's so disgusting. It's so insulting. How dare they do that?
You are so right, because if democracy really mattered to Patty Murray, she would have no problem debating me prior to ballots being dropped.
everyone supports you, Tiffany Smiley.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, the next revolution could be in Washington State. That would be amazing. And we wish you all the best. Thank you so much for being with us.
We will make it happen.
All right. So, let's say you're the governor of a state with the worst poverty in the nation. Half the kids in public schools can't read properly, at least those that aren't dying from poisoning by the fentanyl coming across the border. Your cities are collapsing into crime, chaos and squalor. And you can barely keep the lights on because the climate extremism you've been pushing in order to pander to your far-left activist base has destroyed the reliability of your electricity grid, as well as helping to cause wildfires by cutting spending on forest management and the maintenance of power lines. You'd think if you were the governor of a state with those kind of problems, you might, I don't know, try and solve them. It's crazy. It's racist to focus on your own state. That's not progressive. What's progressive is picking pathetic political fights with the governor of another state that does actually seem to work. And so, when the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, flew 50 migrants to Martha's Vineyard, obviously, Gavin Newsom leapt into action as part of what he considers his real job, trolling Ron DeSantis, who he does seem disturbingly obsessed with. But of course, behind the entire embarrassing superficial spectacle is an incredibly serious and substantive policy issue: immigration and the border. So when I read this great piece in the Daily Mail about how the Latino community feels about all this, and saw that it was written by our friend Gloria Romero, I knew I had to have her on tonight to talk about it, and here she is. Gloria, it's great to see you. I mean, it was a really, really strong piece you wrote. Just tell us your argument.
Well, basically, as a Latina, as a Democrat, as an American, we can ignore the crossing of 2 million migrants and just ignore it by the mainstream media, not do anything about it. The president never going to the border, the so-called border czar refusing to go to the border. But it took 50 migrants showing up on the most exclusive, woke, Democratic enclave in America, Martha's Vineyard, without a leaf blower, yes, and that's how they talk about it. But without a leaf blower, without mops, to go clean the house of the very woke elite, to basically declare it an emergency, bring out the military, and to solve this border crisis within, a day and a half. It is offensive, and it just shows the complete breakdown and hypocrisy of, sadly, the talking heads in the Democratic Party in America today.
And the hypocrisy is right. I mean, by the way, I had someone was just talking to someone, they had a brilliant line about this, which I hadn't heard before, maybe you've heard this. So we've gone from NIMBYs, not in my backyard, to NIMBYs, not in my vineyard, which I thought was very nice. But the thing that's interesting is I've seen Democrats out there today on all the political shows trying to defend it. And they all basically say the same thing, which is, well, of course we'd like to do something about the border, but, we've been arguing for comprehensive immigration reform, and we have to wait for that. Why? This is not anything to do with legislation. It's a federal government responsibility to secure the border. You don't need legislation, you just do it.
Well, absolutely. And you know what? We can do comprehensive immigration reform later. But right now the issue is...
I agree we need reform. But first, secure the border.
Absolutely. You get in a car to drive, first thing you do is you put on your security belt. Same thing as well. We know that it is an open border. Interestingly, some of the interviews that were done with migrants when they were interviewed in Martha's Vineyard said, hey, you know what? The border's wide open. Thank you, Joe Biden, for opening the border.
Exactly.
So we all see it. We know it. And so we've got to go ahead and secure the border, because if not, we're looking at continued human trafficking, the crime wave, sexual assault, the drive to fentanyl and drugs. Exactly. It's killing us.
And I should remind our audience who haven't seen Gloria before, you were the Democratic Party leader of the California State Senate. And to that point, I mean, there's hardly any Democrats left, it seems to me, who are sort of even vaguely sort of moderate and reasonable about things. But interestingly today, I saw this from Bill Clinton. Doesn't do many interviews now, but this was very interesting. Let's watch this.
Now what you have is a lot of people who are essentially economic migrants coming in, essentially gaming the system, using the asylum way to get in. Isn't it true that there has to be some order placed on this, some control?
I agree with that. Very interesting.
Absolutely. And now Bill Clinton has spoken. So let's see overall if we can get some return to sanity within the Democratic Party that really has been lacking on this. We need leadership. We need a voice. We cannot continue ignoring what is happening on the southern border that the rest of us can see. And that's why you've seen as well, too, so many, especially Latinos, leaving, walking away from the Democratic Party because the leaders, there's a gap between the so-called talking heads of the Democratic Party and the rank and file. And I think we're going to see a wake-up call this November and going into 2024.
Yeah, well, you spotted that and have been talking about it before anyone else. And you're a real leading voice in all of that, Gloria. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
All right, we'll be right back to Gloria. What happens if you put together the Democrats' open borders zealotry with another of their obsessions, drug legalization? Well, you have a total catastrophe, a massive explosion of crime and violence as Mexican cartels build a vast illegal marijuana industry. That's exactly what's been happening recently in California, and it's spreading to the rest of the country. Daily Caller investigative journalist Jorge Ventura has put together a fantastic documentary on this, and I spoke to him about it for my podcast, The Daily California. He told me that although Democrats totally ignore this issue, there is one member of Congress who's noticed and is trying to do something about it.
As I was covering the border, I actually met Congressman Mike Garcia. So for folks who don't know, Mike Garcia, he represents District 25 here in California, and my hometown is actually in District 25. And he said, hey, Jorge, the reason I'm so focused on the border, we have a community back in California called Antelope Valley, and what he said is we have a Mexican cartel crisis with illegal marijuana. I would say if it wasn't for him, a lot of this issue wouldn't even make it into the news, and a lot of these, like LA County, really depended on Garcia because Garcia fought for them to get funding by highlighting this issue, bringing even the issue to DC. Interesting. So he's been doing a fantastic job on it.
And here he is now with us in the flesh. It's California Congressman, a member of the House Appropriations Committee, Mike Garcia. Mike, I think you got his vote.
I think so, yeah.
But this is unbelievable. When I heard the details,
you wouldn't believe it.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, I didn't believe it myself until I saw it firsthand. We started getting phone calls about a year and a half ago about these illegal marijuana grows propping up in the middle of the high desert of LA, the Antelope Valley, Palmdale, Lancaster, in the northern part of my district. By the dozens. And so I took a flight with the LA sheriffs in their helicopter and flew around, and what I saw just blew me away. Literally hundreds, if not over 1,000 of these nurseries that in many cases, most of them were over an acre, some of them as large as 10, 20 acres, and very elaborate nurseries with infrastructure stealing our water, in some cases literally piping hoses for miles out of the California aqueduct. So in a state where we have a massive drought, stealing our water. Being run by cartels, being managed and actually farmed by people who came across the border illegally and were paying off their debt. They were smuggled across the border by the cartels. This is their way of paying back their debt. And so terrible impact to the environment, to the community. We saw local constituents being held at gunpoint for water, people stealing local farmers' water, threatening to effectively annex their land. And we fixed the problem. I held a town hall right in the middle of my district where we had the constituents come and tell us what was happening. And in the front row, we had a cartel member dressed similar to what I am right now, except he had a holster and a little 9mm pistol there. And in the front row, just looking at me like this is not his problem, and we need to go away. And so we did reach out to local law enforcement, Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and we got the folks together to start tackling this problem. We got federal help to come in and augment this funding, about $1 million in federal grant money for the marijuana eradication team to come in. DEA agents to augment the local law enforcement who were obviously already overtasked and underfunded. And we've been basically hammering away at these guys for the last year and a half. And we put a national spotlight. We still have more to do, but we've reduced by about 80% so far.
Well, that shows what one engaged member of Congress can do. But I mean, unfortunately, I always look at these problems from a policy point of view, like the stock and the flow. So you've dealt with the stock, as it were, like what was there. But the flow just keeps coming because of the border situation.
Yeah,
and it's not just it's all over California.
Yeah, and that's
moving to other states.
Exactly the problem. And as aggressive as we were, we're just squeezing the balloon, right? The cartels are now setting up shop in San Bernardino and other counties outside of LA County because that's our district where we're focusing on it. It would really go a long way and help us quite a bit if the President of the United States and his administration would actually secure the border and choke off that flow so we wouldn't actually be incentivizing cartels to come to our district. that would be a novel idea to have our elected officials actually look out for our security and not put us in harm's way.
And exactly, I mean, and to the point I just made earlier with Gloria, this idea that they need to wait for legislation to secure the border is just
unreal. Unreal. We seized $2 billion worth of illegal marijuana, street value, 600 animals, a couple hundred arrests, about 4 dozen firearms. When you compare the marijuana problem that we have in our high desert problem to the fentanyl issues we have now nationwide, it's a very tame problem compared to the killer called fentanyl, and this administration's at fault for that.
So you're in a crucial race, and in terms of control of the House, and I just want to check in with you on that. How's it going? What are the big issues?
Yeah, no, it's a tight race. It always will be. I represent a blue district. It's not a purple district. This is a district that Joe Biden won by 12% in the last election. I won by a very narrow margin, but it's because people in my district are informed about the issues and the candidates, and they're paying attention to the lower level seats. And in the end, it doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican. They just want security, and they want to be able to continue to survive, especially in California. And right now, the economy is on the forefront of everyone's minds. This is what everyone's talking about. Literally every town hall. I just had one a couple weeks ago. Inflation is a backbreaker. Cost of living in California. All of these things are on a completely different coordinate system than the national averages, and we're struggling just to make ends meet in our district throughout California. And the larger mission for me is to prevent the nation from becoming California.
Right, exactly.
And this president and his administration have adopted California's policies as a blueprint for his domestic policy. And this is why we're seeing now the country trend the way it is, especially from an economic perspective.
I'm very confident that we need this man in the Congress. Good luck, Mike. It's great to see you tonight. Thank you so much. And to hear the whole conversation on this topic I had with Jorge Ventura, and it really is eye-opening. When you hear the details, you just won't believe it. Go to my website, Steve Hilton's Rebel Base, and sign up for the email. We'll send you the episode when it comes out tomorrow. All right, much more up ahead. So, Democrats and their media lick-spittles are currently pushing the narrative that it's all going great for the Biden administration as we head into the midterms. But if everything really is going so great under Biden, why is he always yelling?
Think about what you think about. Fewer. Not more. Fewer. How quickly we forget. People were hurt. We're changing people's lives. People line up all kinds of vehicles just to get a box of food. Families don't have to wait decades to be brought back together. The idea that the people would have to wait in line an hour and a half to get a box of food. The only reason the insurance company has to cover it is because of that law.
Okay, so it's either the angry old man yelling or the creepy old man whispering. Either way, not exactly what you'd expect from a leader of a country where everything's going great. Here with the reaction is California Republican Party Chairwoman Jessica Milan Patterson, along with political commentator Alicia Krause. Great to see you both. I don't know, I mean, I just want to watch that over and over. This yell, it's so weird. He's always yelling.
He is, and this is a guy who ran on not being a divider, but being a uniter. Yes. And he continues to just alienate half of the country, 5 million Republicans that live here in California. And it's just been so unfortunate to watch, because he said he was going to bring our country together, and he's done anything but.
I mean, what's he so angry about?
Maybe his approval rating?
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that I think that he really thought and likes to blame everything on the previous administration, which we've seen Democrats do in the past. He learned this from, the guy that he was VP for. Obama did this a lot, where it's, it's Bush's fault, and Biden has done that it's Trump's fault. But if you look at the data and you look at polling, Americans and voters aren't buying that argument anymore. So maybe that's what he's ticked about.
It's just weird, because I don't know whether he thinks it's a sort of compelling way to make a point, or they've told him that it just feels so weird. And exactly as you say, rather than bringing people in, he's just pushing them away.
He could be talking about the 40-year high inflation and how he's going to fix it. But we know he doesn't really have a plan.
Because he caused it.
He caused it, and then he celebrated a 40-year high inflation while those numbers came out on Wednesday. Yes. It was just absolutely ridiculous to watch. He could be talking about spiking crime that is affecting Democrat-run cities and states all over our country.
And people are worried about these things. He doesn't. Instead, he finds ways to be divisive and divide our country.
That's exactly what he's doing. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, but like, as far as they're concerned, they want to make the election. There's all this stuff about democracy. It's demonizing the opponents. It's like it's really ruthlessly cynical. I mean, it's the exact opposite. It's just instead of what he said he would do.
It's also the exact opposite of what the voters are paying attention to right now.
Right.
It's the exact opposite of those kitchen table issues that you have moms, working moms, that are still experiencing a she-session after COVID and the pandemic, and you have minority kids that are still being forced maxed in places that are with after-school programs in blue states. You still have people, I mean, groceries are up 13% across the country. Fuel is up across the country. You go anywhere in this country, that's what people are affected by. And I think Democrats are trying to pivot that conversation before the midterms. But he needs to, like, reel it in, stop holding hands with people that aren't his wife, and get back on the issue. It feels weird to give him advice, because I obviously don't want the Democrats to win.
I know, because they just make a mess of everything. And it's either because they're totally incompetent, or actually more and more because it's this far left extremism that's really taken over the party, I think.
It really has. And, when we just saw earlier Gloria Romero in here, who has seen it within her own party.
Yes.
When we talk about education, which is something that she's been a champion for here in California, and we're watching as 50% of our students are not reading at grade level in California.
That's an amazing statistic. That's exactly right.
And when you talk about math and science, it's less than a third. We should be tackling those issues. That's a way to bring people together, fixing our education system.
And it's an issue that pulls well, even amongst, like, Democratic women here in the state. So it's something that I think should be a bipartisan issue that we are working on together to help America's children, because I thought that we cared about the future of the country. But
I know, and but there's no chance of it when you've got this sort of angry old man wandering around sort of yelling at everyone. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen.
Well, that's why we have to elect more Republicans, and we have a lot of opportunities to do that.
That's the perfect contribution that I would expect from a party chair. Very good, but I mean, we'll talk, actually, and also a perfect way to tee up our conversation later in the show, which Let's Get in the Issues will be back. We'll be talking about the chances of Republicans and Democrats in the midterms. We'll see you later on. And we'll be back after this short break.
what you do.